the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
And very pleasant good afternoon. Hope all is well and everyone is safe wherever you are. And we'll keep you posted in case the world comes to an end because of weather in the south before we go off the air. We have plenty to discuss. A lot of basketball last night and tonight as well, with Kentucky, the number one team in the country, playing in Starkville. We'll get to all of that. Your phone calls at 855-242-7285. All of that, but we begin with one of our favorite coaches, Coach Mark Richt of the University of Georgia. We've talked a lot about him, as we believe his Bulldogs will be the favorite in the SEC East. Not that anyone wants to be the favorite in the SEC East. We welcome Coach Richt to our program. Coach, I hope things have quieted down a little bit since recruiting and since the season. Good afternoon.
How you doing, Paul? Everything's going well. We're in a little bit of off-season program time for our players, getting them prepared for spring ball, and looking forward to getting that started.
Well, I bet, no doubt. And I was joking about being the favorite in the SEC East. I'm sure that's not anything based on past history, something you want, but it comes with the territory, and most people think the Dogs are going to be very good this year. I assume you agree.
Well, we've got a chance. Everybody's got a chance to be good. That's the whole deal with the SEC. That's why everybody loves to watch it, and it's a little bit unpredictable. But we think we've got a really good core of guys coming back, and we'll definitely be very competitive.
Recruiting has been over a couple of weeks, and you did quite well, very highly nationally ranked. You even picked up one young man after the fact. I know that you have discussed that a little bit, but that was a very unusual case. How did you feel? I mean, I don't know how much you can. I mean, I can say, but
right.
I would love to get your reaction to that.
Well, first of all, we were just glad to get Roquan to sign with Georgia, and I think that's where his heart is. I think that's where he wants to be. And I think it's where he's going to end up. So, we're glad. We think he's a heck of a ball player and a great kid.
Understood. Let's talk about what you've lost and obviously what you have coming back a year ago. Todd Gurley was among the at the very top of the list of Heisman candidates. I've rarely ever seen a situation like this where one great player, one of the best, if not the best, at his position leaves, and it doesn't seem like there's much of a drop-off. We're talking about Nick Chubb, of course, and not that that's a big surprise to you, but your reaction to how well he played in Todd's absence and what to expect from him in the future.
Right. Well, Nick is a special guy, no doubt. A great student, a great person, a very quiet, humble kid, hard worker. Doesn't seem to get tired in practice. Doesn't seem to get tired in the games, even if you give him the ball over 30 times, and, not only did Todd, was not able to play, but we had Sony that was banged up a little bit. We had this Keith Marshall who was banged up, when looked like we had, 4 or 5 guys that were really strong in that position. We got down to really 2 with Nick Chubb and Brendan Douglas. So that was part of the reason why Chubb got so many carries and he got so many opportunities. But gosh, he took advantage of it. Just a great tackle breaker, a guy with great vision, and a guy that hopefully won't change because he's as good as they come.
You made you didn't make the changes, but your longtime assistant Mike Bogue received the head coaching job, and you had to make a change, and you brought in Coach Schottenheimer from the NFL. Let's talk about that for a moment, if you don't mind. What
Sure.
you see in Brian Schottenheimer and how things will be different.
Right. Well, Brian's a guy that had a really strong itch to go to college, to go to the college game, and a guy that I think is going to fit the college game very well. His personality is such that I think he's going to be an outstanding recruiter. He's a very good teacher and communicator, and philosophically, the things that he was doing with the Rams or the NFL style of football is very, very similar to what we've been doing on offense at Georgia, and we wanted to try to stay pretty close to that same mold. So, there'll be a little terminology change here and there, but overall, I think, philosophically, we're still going to want to be a team that is very interested in having great balance between the run and pass, and I think that we'll continue to have a lot of two-back sets, but also have the ability to spread out. So, I mean, we'll be very similar to what we were a year ago.
Coach, it's not an unusual thing in the SEC to be replacing quarterbacks. You've had some really good ones last year. Hunter Mason filled in, and now you have another quarterback battle going on. What do you see? And I mean, not that you're one for predictions, but I'd like to get your insight on where it stands right now and where you hope to see it go.
Well, we've got Fatone Bauta, we've got Bryce, we got Jacob Park and Bryce Ramsey, excuse me. And, so we've got three guys right now that are on scholarship that are going to be battling away for that job. And I don't really see a front runner right now. I see three guys that have a lot of talent, that have a lot of competitive spirit about them, and I think it's going to be a great competition. We're going to give them all a really good opportunity to have reps with the first and second units and try to make it as fair as we can, so we can make a really good judgment on where we need to go at that position. But looking forward to seeing them compete.
Coach, you always seem to be a very humble person who doesn't really like to talk about yourself, but you did receive a contract extension and a raise right before the recruiting season ended, and a lot of Georgia fans were relieved. I don't know if those things faze you at all, but I would like to get your reaction to that.
Well, I don't really worry too much about those kind of things. I've always kind of trusted that if Georgia wants me around, they'll make sure that I'll be around, and if they want to give me a raise, that's good. They can give me a raise, and so I've got a lot of faith in that and faith in the Lord, and I don't let that worry me too much. But certainly, I think it's a good sign in recruiting and as far as stability and things of that nature. And I think that's what a lot of the recruits want to see, and so I think it was a very positive thing for Georgia.
Do you think there's a message that you have to send? I'm not talking about your case because you've been there a long time and have a great record, but do recruits need to know, generally speaking, that their coach will be around for a while?
Well, I think they all would like to hear that. I mean, recruiting is a lot about relationships, and they get attached to a head coach, they get attached to a position coach, a coordinator. It's just natural for people, when they communicate and they spend time together, to get attached, and so I think that is a big part of what's going on, and certainly the University of Georgia stands alone. I mean, it's a great place, regardless of who's coaching the team. The University of Georgia is always going to attract tremendous talent, and but I think a lot of recruiting is relationship driven, and so thinking that a coach is going to be there, I think, is important to people.
Coach, always appreciate your time. Hope to see you soon, and be well as you get ready for spring.
All right, thank you for having me on the show. We'll see you, Paul.
Thank you.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We welcome you back to the program, and I was mentioning during the break, we had a call yesterday from a Tennessee football player, but I don't think anyone really quite caught. He gave his name. This story has made a lot of news because it's unusual for a current player to call in a program, particularly one like this. You might occasionally hear it in the same vicinity of the team, but not a show that is heard and disseminated nationally. And a lot of people have said, "Well, I can't believe you guys didn't know what he said." I mean, maybe it was easier to hear on radio, maybe it was easier to hear on television. But we didn't hear his name here. Therefore, we weren't really sure exactly who we were talking to. And sometimes you have to be careful. You get hoaxes from time to time, and that's why we were a little bit behind the curve when he called in. I'm not going to make a big deal about it because there are some coaches who probably would prefer their players not to call in radio shows. We've had it happen before, but not lately. And haven't heard any noise out of Butch Jones today, so we won't make it any worse. We just simply wanted to address it early in the show. Lance is calling from Tennessee. Good afternoon, Lance.
You're so disrespectful today, Paul. I heard you in the last hour. You want to say Kentucky owns the sport? They might own the SEC, and you want to talk about Arkansas, Kentucky being an epic game? You're crazy. You downplay the Duke, North Carolina game. I mean, I think it's pretty epic when the first tape shows up.
Well, hey, Lance, 1 second. First of all, is North Carolina even relevant anymore in basketball? I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, they played a great game against Duke. I mean, they lost at home last night to NC State, and you call that a big-time program? Please.
Come on, Paul.
Roy Williams is looking pretty old as a head basketball coach right now. I know you're a Duke guy, but I'm talking about Carolina.
They're a bigger team than Arkansas.
What has Carolina done lately?
What if Kentucky played in the ACC, Paul? You think they'd be undefeated?
I guarantee you one thing: they beat North Carolina at home last night. They would beat North Carolina by 25 at the Dean Dome.
Well, what makes you think Kentucky can beat Duke? Because when I look at the matchup,
I didn't say that. I mean, if Kentucky played at Cameron Indoor tonight, I'd give Duke a pretty good shot. I mean, it would be a great game. But Kentucky at North Carolina, that would be a joke. There is no one on North Carolina that could stay within anyone on the Kentucky team.
But the North Carolina State, North Carolina rivals are a hell of a lot bigger than Arkansas, Kentucky.
Well, no, I would agree with you on that.
It's a rival game. Anything can happen.
And by the way, North Carolina did play Kentucky this year. It was a beatdown.
Yeah, see, I know it did. That's all right though. But
don't come in here bumping your gums all Duke and North Carolina. I mean that's. I mean, when North Carolina can't win at home, then don't give me North Carolina. Duke's lost a couple of games, but I respect Duke. I don't respect North Carolina in basketball this year.
Well, that's good. I'm just talking about you said Arkansas Kentucky's an epic game. I mean, I just thought it was a big game.
Hey,
it was
Lance, it's a big game. It's a challenge for Kentucky. They haven't had many this year in the SEC. I buy that. I mean, they've had three testers. Ole Miss at home, which looks a little flukish now. The game at A&M, and then obviously the game at LSU. I think they'll have another really tough game on Saturday afternoon.
And I think you're a little bit too hard on Coach K too. You want to act like John Wood is the best coach.
I've never been. Hey, Lance, get your facts right. I am not hard on Coach K. I respect Coach K. I think Roy Williams is becoming a laughingstock, though. That's my opinion.
He was a laughingstock at Kansas. Don't you remember the joke on Roy Williams? He's allergic to a championship. Kind of like Mark Richt, huh?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, you know, I just think Duke's a little bit underrated, man. Cyrus Jones is big time. Kentucky's a full-court press team. You can't press.
Lance, I hope that you play for the national championship. We can end this conversation.
I can't wait, Paul. I can't wait.
But if you're a Duke fan and you're counting on beating Kentucky, you got a long wait. Won't happen this year.
I hope they play. Everybody's waiting on it. I hope that happens.
I really don't know that many people who are waiting on it.
That's all I've heard about on it. I know Skip Bayless pretty high on it. I respect him a lot.
Skip
That's
who?
on the show I watch. Is your show in the first tape. So.
Skip Bayless?
If it ain't had been on your show on first tape, I don't even know about it.
No, listen, I'm a big fan of Skip.
That's just I just love your show, Paul. And I thank you for your time. And
thank you. Okay, and Lance, I'm not arguing with you. I realize you and I agree probably more than we disagree. I was just trying to make a point about all this North Carolina basketball talk. I mean, I saw that game last night. I mean, when you get schooled at home by Mark Gottfried.
I understand. I wasn't trying to hop North Carolina. I was just trying to hop the game. I mean,
I agree.
Arkansas, Kentucky.
The biggest game in college, Lance. The biggest game in college basketball this year has been Duke and North Carolina. It's because of the rivalries, and it was a great game. I'm not saying it wasn't, but we've seen what's happened to Duke, North Carolina since then. Now,
I understand, but we can't help that.
Okay.
We can't help that.
See you in Indianapolis. We can sit together when Duke gets run out by Kentucky. Anyway, I don't even know why I was arguing with the guy, but Mac is up next in Tuscaloosa. What do you say, Mac?
How you doing, Paul?
Okay, thank you.
I just had a question about the the SEC football. With it being 2 years since we won a title in the SEC. You know, I'm hearing that it's the SEC is overrated or not what we used to be. But the way I see it is that the SEC, the conferences, like it kind of goes in cycles. Like before the SEC's run, like the 7-8 year run, it was the Big 12 or the Big 10 or the Pac-12 or whoever you want to call it. But I was just going to ask you, do you think the way the SEC is recruiting could change that cycle and kind of keep the SEC on top?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key to it. I mean, you have to recruit well, and there's no question the SEC is doing just that. Let's check in next with Joe in Georgia. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Paul.
How you doing?
I'd like to comment on the Lance guy from Tennessee.
Okay.
You know, everybody's always up on Duke and Kentucky, but I think Duke this year is probably another Duke team that's going to get showed their weakness to be defense in the first or second round of the tournament. And I think defense is what's going to win the tournament for Kentucky.
Well, yeah. Listen, I mean, Kentucky is now just starting to. I think Kentucky is just now starting to blossom as a team, and that's what Seth Greenberg told us the other night. We'll talk to another expert a little bit later on. But I mean, they're brutal on defense. You know that. Hey, thank you. Appreciate the call. 855-242-7285. A lot of screaming. By the way, can we get an interpreter for Lance one day? I mean, I had my hearing tested this morning. I can't make out. I mean, Lance and can you imagine a phoner feud between Lance and Darryl? How about that? What do you think? You like that? Can we make that happen? We can make it not happen. Jake is up in Pennsylvania on this winter day. How are you, Jake?
How you doing, Paul?
Oh.
First-time caller and a long-time listener to your show.
Thank you.
And I enjoy it. The sun's shining nice and bright up here. I don't know what you got about the town there, but it sounds like we're in better shape than you are today.
Yeah, I mean, right now there's this this winter storm, Remus, I think is the name, is blowing through Alabama, then Georgia, and then South Carolina, then North Carolina. So I think it's already moved past Texas and Louisiana, but it's covering the South pretty severely right now. I've got bags packed and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in the car.
Well, as somebody that's lived different parts of the country, I enjoy listening to talk shows from different sections. And I remember years ago being up in New England and listening to the talk shows up there when Calipari was going through all that stuff in Massachusetts and then again in Memphis and Kentucky now. And I spend more time listening or checking out coaches than I do teams because I was a high school coach at one time and I kind of follow some of their careers. And I remember them saying in Massachusetts, can the leopard change his spots? So, hey, Kentucky, enjoy it. I found it interesting last week that every Kentucky fan that called you said, hey, we don't enjoy the one and done, but that was always the first comment. But then they went on to justify what's going on. So, hey, good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
But I think if you want to look at one program, and this is the kind of program that I've just watched over the last 4 or 5 years develop, you look at Virginia and what's going on there.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
There's a guy there that's building a program, doing it the right way, and with the limitations of recruiting and stuff like that, and not being one of the factories. But
Jake, did you say you coached basketball?
Yeah, high school. Yeah. And the other thing I just wanted to mention, and the real reason I jumped on the phone today, I lived in Carolina for a while and used to read a guy down there named Louis Grizzard, and I'm sure he was a buddy of yours.
Got a chance I did know Louis and had an opportunity to hang around him a couple of times late in his life. And Louis Grizzard opened the door for pretty much every person of my era to do whatever he wanted. He was the funniest writer I've ever read. Louis Grizzard, for those who don't know, he went to the University of Georgia and was just a legendary figure in the South, and I mean legendary.
Yeah, I figured you'd have some good stories about him. But I grew up a Penn State fan being up here, but when I was living in North Carolina, I read a lot of Lewis, and he kind of converted me into becoming sort of a Georgia fan. And when they got Mark Richt in that program, I really became a Georgia fan. And I don't care what your Georgia people say. Like him, not like him, here's one guy that's in his corner for the way he runs his program and what he's doing for the kids in the program.
Jake, I agree with you on that, and as I said a few minutes ago, sometimes you just have to be around Mark Richt to understand it and appreciate it. And I'm not saying there's more to life than winning, because you know that you can only go so far if you don't win. But running a first-rate program and getting rid of players who don't adhere to what you're trying to do is another part of it. I really appreciate your time, Jake.
Yeah, good deal. Good talk to you.
And by the way, not to go back on Lance, but Kentucky is 2-0, I think, in the ACC this year. They beat North Carolina, they beat Louisville, and they'll beat any ACC team that comes along.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We've been chatting about the Gators' winter of discontent following an autumn of discontent. When will it change? Is there hope? Well, we saw a little bit of hope from Jim McElwain at the end of recruiting. He turned around the disaster, and most people felt pretty good when it was over. But the Florida basketball situation went from bad to worse to near disaster last night with a loss that no one really saw coming, and it just has captivated more conversation and generated more negativity. Mike Bianchi, the Prince of Brightness, joins us from Orlando. Always good to catch up, Mike. And as a columnist and talk show host, but also as a realist, I'm sure you're taking no pleasure in seeing what's happening with Billy Donovan's team this winter.
Oh, absolutely not. Nobody expected it. I mean, they were a top 10 team in the preseason. They were overrated at the beginning of the season, but nobody saw this coming, Paul. I mean, to lose 9 of their last 12 games, to lose to Missouri last night. I mean, this looks to be a lock for Billy Donovan's first losing season since '96, I think.
And I'm curious, on your show and just around the town and around the state, Florida basketball can be very good and very compelling when the Gators are racing toward a Final Four, and they've done that a number of times, two championships. But when things are average, what type of buzz, if any, would be created outside of maybe Gainesville proper?
No buzz. No buzz with Florida basketball throughout the rest of the state. And to me, that's what's so amazing about what Billy Donovan's done at Florida. He has been able to create an elite program in a state that, quite frankly, doesn't care much about college basketball. I mean, Jim McElwain's recruiting class, even though it was like 25th in the country, that created a lot more buzz than what's going on with Florida's basketball program right now.
And we've been through this before. He did leave after 2 national championships. He stuck around, had 2 tough years, and then finally got it rolling again. And it looked like all had been all was right. But what do you think about his future? Do you think he's going to want to deal with this long term, or with this man who is well liked everywhere in the game, particularly in the NBA? Do you think he'll consider saying, you know what, I've done all I can do here?
Well, first of all, I think this is temporary. Billy Donovan will get it turned around. The guy's, one of the great college basketball coaches in the game, so I think he'll get it turned around. But, yeah, I think Billy Donovan has always been a guy who has never quite closed the book on the NBA. In fact, during the NCAA tournament last year in Orlando, when they were making their march to the Final Four, I even asked him, are you a lifer at Florida? And he would not commit to that. He goes, no, there are some things about the NBA that intrigue me, and the number one thing in the NBA that intrigues him is it's all basketball all the time. He doesn't have to deal with recruiting against John Calipari. He doesn't have to recruit with having players suspended for various reasons, probably some of them with drug testing. Let's face it, in the NBA they don't test for marijuana, Paul.
It's good to know. I won't be trying out anytime soon. Mike, you mentioned McElwain and the big finish in recruiting, how big a story that was. That's settled down now in the 3 weeks that have passed since then. What's the state of affairs right now for Gator football looking ahead to the upcoming season?
Well, obviously everybody's excited that Jim McElwain is an offensive-minded coach after the abysmal performance of Florida's offense in the 4 years Will Muschamp was the head coach. I mean, Will Muschamp, for all he did at Florida as far as changing the culture and all of that, his teams were almost unwatchable on offense. And so Gator fans are excited about Jim McElwain bringing a new offense to town. The Gators are obviously trying to play catch-up as far as facilities. They're building a new indoor practice facility. They're upgrading some of their other facilities, which, by the way, is another reason maybe Billy Donovan would consider leaving the University of Florida for the NBA, because, the Gators right now, their facilities aren't up to snuff with some other schools in the SEC. So that's mainly what Florida's focused on right now, trying to get their facilities upgraded so McElwain and Donovan can recruit with the best schools in the country.
Mike, I said a minute ago that most consider Jeremy Foley to be at the top of the food chain when it comes to athletic directors, and not to come down on him, but how do you miss on facilities in the arms race that is the SEC?
I don't know. Paul, I was one of these guys who, when people would criticize Florida's facilities, I used to say, Florida's facilities are fine. I mean, Urban Meyer won 2 national titles with those facilities. Spurrier won with the facilities. But the fact of the matter is, when you have Alabama, you're recruiting against Nick Saban, who has a lazy river running through the athletic complex at Alabama. Athletes today want the perks. They want the smoothie bars in the athletic complex. They want all of that. In Florida, I think they got a little lackadaisical. I mean, they're the last, Florida State built an indoor practice facility. UCF down in Orlando built an indoor practice facility. The Gators haven't had one until, it was on the board last year. Muschamp won it, and then when McElwain came in, McElwain says, hey, we need to build this. We need to build it now, and that's what they're doing. So I don't know how and why Florida fell behind in facilities. The Gators have a great overall athletic program, gymnastics, swimming, volleyball, go down the list. But football is the moneymaker, and you would have think they would have had up-to-date, state-of-the-art facilities to compete with all the national programs in the country.
Yeah, and by the way, I was at Tennessee a couple of months ago, and not only do they have a smoothie bar, they have 15 different types of peanut butter. I mean, they've got it all. Except Tennessee hasn't beaten Florida in seemingly a lifetime. We hear from Tennessee fans all the time, and they're talking smack about the Florida game next year, ending that streak from a distance. Are you buying the Butch Jones train?
Yeah, I am. I'm Tennessee. Come on, Paul. You went to Tennessee. Tennessee is a great, great campus. I realize they don't have a large recruiting base right around that area, but just the atmosphere. When Tennessee football's on top, a game atmosphere there at Neyland Stadium along the river. It's a beautiful atmosphere. They obviously care a lot about college football. Tennessee will get it turned around with the right coach. And Butch Jones, again, I don't know how good of a coach he is, but he seems to be a really good recruiter, which is something Derek Dooley didn't do and Phil Fulmer wasn't doing at the end of his tenure. So if they can get the recruits in there, I think they can turn it around.
Finally,
have you ever been on the lazy river that runs through Alabama's football facility?
I've never been to Alabama.
Yeah, right. You've never been to Alabama, okay?
No.
Don't they have some sort of river going through their athletic complex?
I'm not allowed to speak of anything I've seen in Nick Saban's headquarters.
I think I got a picture of you tubing down that lazy river.
I think you do, but please, for the sake of impartiality, do not reveal it. Let me ask you, Will Muschamp, certainly there was some angst after he left in terms of what he did recruiting-wise for Auburn, but let me ask you how the Gator Nation felt. Now, certainly there may have been some pleasure with Alabama and Nick Saban losing, but how does Gator Nation feel now that Urban Meyer is on top of the college football world once again?
They feel rotten. I mean, how do you think they should feel? Urban Meyer pretty much abandoned the Gators when they were at a low point, and the program was broken. He left. He resurfaces at Ohio State immediately and turns that program around, and now he's won a national championship. It's sort of like Paul, I know you've been dumped by women in the past. It's sort of like when your girlfriend dumps you and, she winds up marrying some Hollywood movie star and you're stuck back home in your trailer with your, wife. Well,
hold on. Let me correct you, Mike.
Not with your wife, Paul, but with
I'm talking about. You're going back in time. But to be dumped, everyone always says, I'm sure you got dumped a lot. But to be dumped, you had to have a girlfriend.
But yeah, Gator fans feel like the jilted lover, Paul. That's how they feel. Their girlfriend went off and found success somewhere else, and nobody likes that. Nobody likes that. You want your ex-girlfriend to marry some drunk in the Bowery somewhere.
I think one of mine did. And she's now calling the show every day.
What's her name? What's the one who calls?
That's Phyllis.
Yeah, Phyllis. That's what Phyllis is, right?
No, well said. I mean, speaking of urban though, and I realize Florida's had some bad divorces, but I do want to close by asking about Muschamp. Certainly, he won't be remembered very fondly. Has his recruiting at Auburn, taking a couple of players, not as many as I think originally were predicted, is that affecting anything, or is Will Muschamp just a memory that Gator fans choose to forget quickly?
No, well, Gator fans are bitter about the recruiting thing, and they're you talked about you talked about Jeremy Foley. I mean, a lot of Florida fans wonder why the Gators paid Will Muschamp $6.3 million out the door, and then he immediately begins taking their recruits. He took their money as well. So, yeah, Gator fans are still upset at Will Muschamp, not only because he didn't win, but because he immediately left. He took the $6.3 million, which contractually was his. But, why couldn't there be something in a coach's contract that says once you take the buyout, you can't go to another conference school within a year or something? I mean, I don't know why ADs don't put things like that in contracts. Why don't they, Paul?
Well, yeah, and speaking of that, I mean, I'm not trying to go, contract law here or torts on Jeremy Foley, but on top of that, they ended up spending quite a bit of money on McElwain with Colorado State. I mean, everyone knows that.
Yeah, $7 million buyout to get McElwain to come to Gainesville. So, yeah, Jeremy Foley spent a lot of money in this coaching change.
Is he still as highly regarded as I introduced him to be? Is he still the best athletic director in the SEC and perhaps all of college sports?
Yeah, Jeremy Foley's a great athletic director. He's won, 22 of the Florida athletic programs won 22 of the last 23 all-sports trophies in the SEC. So as far as running an overall athletic program, yeah, he's considered one of the best. But you know how football fans are in the SEC. It's what have you done for me lately? They look at Will Muschamp and say, hey, this guy hired a bad football coach to head our football program. They don't remember that he also hired Urban Meyer. He also hired Billy Donovan. So, so Jeremy Foley's getting grief now because of the state of the football program.
Finally, you've been part of Steve Spurrier's posse for as long as I can remember.
Certainly. Me and the head ball coach, we get along pretty well.
Terrible season in Columbia, and not much more expected next year. How do you see it ending for him?
Well, I know you like Spurrier as well. I hope it ends well for him because he's been one of the great coaches and one of the great personalities in college football. But when he took that South Carolina job, everybody wondered, why is he going there? That's a place that for the life of the program has never been able to build a winner. Everybody thought Spurrier might come in there and, install the fun and gun offense and take the SEC by storm like he did at Florida. But college football's changed since then, Paul. And, I think Spurrier has done about as well as he can do at South Carolina, winning the 3 straight 11-win seasons. But that's hard to maintain at a school like that.
Great stuff as always, Mike Bianchi from down in Orlando. Mike, many thanks.
Certainly, Paul. Good to talk to you.
Mike Bianchi, always fun to have on, and not short of opinions on any subject.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We're now going to Arkansas, and we're joined by Jordan and Lindsay. Jordan and Lindsay, thank you very much. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi, Paul.
Hey there.
I'm Lindsay, and we work at Sport Clips here in Searcy, Arkansas. So
Searcy,
our
Arkansas.
TVs stay on the SEC network most all day long. We just love you. We watch the Paul show every day that we're here, and we really love your show. And we were just wondering if you could give us your predictions for the game Saturday against Kentucky.
Well, let me think about that. First of all, let me get some advice from you, young ladies. People always criticize the way I wear my hair, what little I have. I mean, if I walk, and I've been to sports clips many times. If I walked in there today, what would you young ladies do with this mop on my head?
Well, we were actually talking about that earlier, and we would thin out your sides a little bit and trim it down, comb it up around your ears and your neck.
Okay.
I would pull your ears, Paul.
Now, Searcy that's not too far from Little Rock, is it?
No, not. About 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay. And so when people come in and they see the SEC network on every day, I would assume they're familiar?
Yes.
Okay. A lot of Arkansas talk lately on this show.
There has been.
Okay, well, let me ask you, you young ladies are closer to the scene than we are. Are you with some of the, or many of the fans calling from the state of Arkansas? Do you see a victory Saturday in Rupp?
Of course we do. Do you?
I don't know. I'm going to have to go ahead and, we're going to call that game, or give us another day or two, okay? I'd like to see Kentucky play tonight in Starkville.
Hey, Paul, will you please call home?
They want you to call the Hogs.
Okay. Will you help me?
Yes.
You taught me how to do it. Okay.
Starts at the bottom. We go.
Ooh, pigs, suey. Go Razorbacks. Go Hogs. Beat Kentucky.
Yay, y'all are so amazing.
I think I've got some Arkansas colors on today anyway, so... Well, listen, it's been a treat to talk to both of you, Jordan and Lindsay, and I hope you'll keep calling back.
You made our day, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
If I slip into your shop here in a couple of weeks, make sure I get good service.
We will.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, best hair maybe in the SEC it resides in Fayetteville. Michael Qualls, he's got it on the floor. He's got a nice head of hair as well.
Yeah, no, I didn't think you were going to say Bielema. Let's go to Robert next, who is in Starkville right now. Hey, Robert.
Hey, Paul. How are you today?
Really well. Thank you for the call.
Man, just want to tell you the snow is coming down here in Starkville. We've got about 1/4 of an inch on the ground. It's covering it real good. Looks like the roads are getting pretty slick. Maybe a sparse crowd at the hump tonight.
Yeah, that's really too bad because this is the biggest game of the year. Fortunately, that is not what I would call hilly country, but it's still treacherous to be on the highways or anywhere. What do they look like right now in and around the city? Are they covered yet, or is it?
Yes, the roads are getting, or I'd say 95% covered, Paul.
Okay.
And where my house is situated, I'm up and down some pretty good hills to get to the hump.
Okay.
Don't think I'll be there tonight.
Well, I don't blame you. I've walked to games in the snow and in school and have driven, and it's not fun. You don't want to get. It's a great basketball scene, but thankfully there is this network you can watch it on tonight.
Oh yeah, I can remember many a time going to watch Mississippi State and Kentucky play in the old gym when there was snow on the ground. And fortunately, we were able to one up old Kentucky a few times.
Yeah.
I heard you and a fellow talking a while ago about my good friend Bob Boyd, who used to coach here.
Oh, yeah. Passed away
recently. I became
recently.
real good friends with Bob during his tenure here. And I got a couple of little stories I'd like to relate to you.
Please do.
First one is one he told me about when he was out at USC and they playing against the great Luau Cinder, and they were ranked number 2 in the nation and had to go to the NIT. And he said, thought I had a pretty good draw. We was playing Notre Dame. Then realized it was March 17th, and we played them in the afternoon. And they were having the St. Patty's Day parade out in front of the garden, and had two officials. One of them was named McKenzie, and the other one was named McNeil. And I told the boys, well, might as well just go out there and take our whooping. And he says they beat us by about 20 points.
No, you don't want to play Notre Dame on St. Patrick's Day.
No, and another story about Bob Boyd was when he was here at Mississippi State. And we had a really, really lousy team. I mean, we had a center named Carl Nichols, and his nickname was Carl No Bucket Nichols. And Kentucky had Turpin and the other fellow that didn't make it.
Bowie.
Yeah, Bowie, but Bowie didn't play. That was probably the first game he missed. But Turpin was in there, and Bob told me before the season started, he said, you know, Robert, Kentucky going to roll in here in January, and they're going to be ranked #1 in the nation, and we're going to beat them. And I just laughed and laughed. I said, you ain't got nobody that can score. How are you going to beat them? He says, we're going to beat them. Well, he gave me 2 tickets to that game that night, and I took my daughter. She was about 7 or 8 years old, and we went up, and it was another cold night. We went up in the stands, and I tell you, I don't think there's 3,000 people there. And by golly, we beat Kentucky. So Kentucky might ought to look out tonight. The Mississippi State Bulldog might just bite you in the backside.
Robert, it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, Paul, the pleasure is all mine, and keep up the good work, and just look out for my Bulldogs tonight.
Will do. Thanks.
Appreciate
it. Yeah, I mean, I'm not taking sides here. We try to be neutral on the show. But I would like to see Kentucky run the table. I really would. I'm not going against the Hogs since I just called the Hogs. And I promise you the next time I'm in Arkansas, I'm going to get a personal lesson on calling the Hogs because I keep not quite there. It's kind of hard. It's a little bit confining calling the Hogs sitting down. So maybe the next time I'll just stand up and have a little more mobility.
On the big screen. At the stadium.
I think I'll just come ahead and do it. Maybe Jerry Jones and I will do it again. I'll give him his sunglasses back.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
And we welcome you back. It has been a good one, and nothing is about to change. More conversation about some upcoming games, one tonight, which we have discussed in great detail. Dan Dockage joins us, the ESPN college basketball analyst. He also hosts a daily show in the state of Indiana. And Dan, thanks very much for being with us. It's always cool to catch up, and can't wait to ask you about doing a show in Indiana. And you, of course, former player and coach for Bob Knight. How is the Hoosier State reacting to this Kentucky quest for perfection and the comparisons to what your friend and ex Coach Bob Knight did in 1976?
I think to their core, every single Hoosier, whether they're Purdue fans or Kentucky fans, wants Kentucky to lose, if you want to know the truth. I will say this, Paul, the classiest guys in the whole thing have been the former players of Coach Knight's 76 team. I talked to them, and this is going back years, 10 years. I've known these guys a long time, but I was talking to Quinn Buckner, captain of the 76 last undefeated team, and, he said, it's a heck of an accomplishment, and for those Kentucky kids to get to live with that the rest of their life would be a great thing, and the only thing it does to us is take away the word last. We still went undefeated. We still have our memories, and, it's interesting because Indiana fans, and nobody knows fan bases better than you do, but Indiana fans, man, it's like anybody else but Kentucky. Please, God. But the former players, they're cool with it. They're like, hey, good for them. If they got a chance, do it and live with it and enjoy it.
When you showed up at Kentucky as a player a couple of years after the 76 championship, was that ever something on your mind or your teammates' minds, or were you just trying to survive Bob Knight?
Hey, we were trying to survive Coach Knight and live up to a legacy. But I'll tell you this, my first road game, Paul, as a freshman, was in the fall of 1981. So Indiana had just won the national championship in the spring. And we go to Kentucky, and honest to God, Paul, we're sitting there, and people are really dressed nice. And I'm sitting on the bench, the game's going on, and I hear some ladies just undressing Coach Knight. You mother, all of this. And I turn around, and I'm thinking, all right, what's this lady look like? And it was a woman in her 30s, 40s, dressed to the nines. She was at a drinker and just this foul mouth. So that kind of told me, this is something I can get on with. This is something I like. This is all right, because you could tell the passion. And when Kentucky came into play in the Assembly Hall, it was just a different environment. So, at Indiana, you're trying to live up to a legacy. Kentucky, you're trying to live up to a legacy, and it was a great rival.
So it wasn't Ashley Judd?
I think Ashley Judd was probably either not born or how old was Ashley Judd?
It was Naomi. Anyway, let's talk a little bit broader. Because Kentucky has a game tonight, obviously in Starkville, and then hosts Arkansas. Arkansas fans are confident. They've won 3 in a row, but realistically, and I think we try. You certainly keep it as real or as real as anyone in the business. What chance do you give anyone of beating Kentucky in the regular season tournament or even in the NCAA tournament?
None. I really haven't given anybody any chance all year long. And I do like this Arkansas team, though. Arkansas can make threes. They get 10 threes through their last 3 games, and they can score. They're 11th in the country at scoring. And look, here's the thing: you're not going to beat Kentucky in half court. You got to get down the floor, and you got to score, and you got to have guys that are not afraid. And I think Mike Anderson and his Arkansas team fits that bill. But I just don't see how you're going to walk into Rupp Arena at the end of the season like this and beat Kentucky. Now, people always say, Paul, oh, man, look at this team or that team. They played Kentucky close. Well, yeah, of course. Going back, and you can only compare it to the last team. The 76 Indiana team had a bunch of close games. A ton. They were down 6 or 8 at halftime in the national championship game, for crying out loud. So that happens. Teams get bored. But I think, Paul, and I don't know what your listeners think or coaches you've had on, but there is no doubt in my mind Coach Calipari wants this as bad as he wants anything in the world, an undefeated team at Kentucky. And this is the time of year where I think last year's toughness of Kentucky is going to take over. And they'll have a game or two that's going to be tough, obviously, but can Arkansas probably be one of them, but nobody's beating Kentucky.
Well, let me ask you about that, because usually after a season like last year, and everyone knows the narrative started number 1, went off the face of the earth, and clawed back with a great run in the SEC tournament and the national championship. Why do you think this has gotten Cal so much? Is it just about his own legacy? Is it? We all know IU and Kentucky don't care for each other. What do you think it is?
Well, I think it's always your own legacy as a coach. Everybody can say the right things, but let's be honest with you. Every coach would like to be the last guy to go undefeated, and I think doing it at a place like Kentucky, with the way Cal has been thought of, either good or bad from people, and I think there are only certain times in your life where you can achieve real greatness, lasting greatness. And an undefeated season is certainly one of those times in your profession. And so I think that, I don't think the Indiana thing plays into it at all. I think everybody pretty much is beyond that. I just think that Cal, with a lot of reasons, one is to prove that the way he's doing this in college basketball works. Another is for these kids. But I always think, Paul, I always think the coach has selfish motives. Not that it's a bad thing. I just think that it's always a part of it.
And let me ask you about him, because no matter when or with whom you bring his name up, there's praise and the natural detractors. What would this mean for him? Winning a championship is great. It would be his second. He nearly had another one a couple of years ago in Memphis. But what would it mean to not only win but to stand up at the very top of that mountain, going undefeated?
Well, it would mean that you become, even more bulletproof. What are you going to say? To him negative. Well, Derrick Rose or Tariq Evans or what? Nobody cares. What you do, if he does what I think they're going to do, he becomes totally and completely bulletproof in terms of any criticism. Any criticism will just be looked at with an eye roll. It'll be looked at as jealousy, and probably should be. I mean, he's been smart enough to talk about players first, all about the player. He's been really smart with that. He's been very public about the grade point average that his kids have achieved, and that's very, very smart. So there can be and there will always be criticism, but it doesn't matter. You go undefeated in your sport in college basketball, you become bulletproof. Don Shula bulletproof. I mean, Coach Knight, until Coach Knight went all Coach Knight on himself, was bulletproof. You know, and you can't criticize a guy when he does what he does unless he brings some unwanted attention, you know, and some unsavory attention to himself after that.
I mean, it's an easier question the morning after the national championship game, but I mean, assuming he does this, I mean, there really isn't an encore, is there? I mean, what do you think he's going to do next? Because the pressure at Kentucky is suffocating as any place in any sport.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I was thinking about that today. I knew I was coming on your show, and I knew I'm getting ready to do Sports Center here and talk about it. I was thinking about that. You know, the only thing that he hasn't done well, really, in college basketball, he's taken a mid-major, you know, Massachusetts to the Final Four. He's taken Memphis, which is kind of in between a high major and a mid-major, to the Final Four. And he would take a blue blood team to the national championship undefeated. I mean, when you look back, the only thing he hadn't done is have success in the NBA. So, you know, I could see him wanting to do that. I could see him not wanting to do that. Hey, even though you won a national championship, still a pretty damn good job coaching at the University of Kentucky. You know what I mean? Yeah, I kind of do. You know, they pay you a lot of money to coach a team that you're going to win. You're not going to have too many miserable nights. But the one thing I would think would certainly heat up would be him going back to the NBA and kind of cementing that legacy as well.
No, well said. Great stuff. I know you have work to do. We appreciate your time here. It was really a treat to have you on.
Hey, Paul, I'm a massive, massive fan, and I thank you for all you do, man. You entertain the heck out of me, and I'm honored to be on the show. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Really appreciate it. Great stuff. Wow, what a incredible conversation. Next time we have Dan on, we'll ask him about trying to guard. We actually did guard Michael Jordan in the NCAA tournament and lived to tell about it.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
It's snowing across the South. That's usually not a big deal if you're watching from Ohio or Connecticut, but it's a big deal, and we are lining up your pictures, getting a lot of tweet pictures from all over SEC country where the snow began in Texas, moved through Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia. Now it's making its way through South Carolina and up the East Coast, which is not SEC country, but still worth mentioning. 855-242-7285. Mark Richt joined us earlier. He didn't seem fazed by the weather. We had Dan Duckich on earlier a few minutes ago talking about college basketball. Mike Bianchi, other guests as well. Let's get back to the calls. And James in Little Rock, Arkansas, where optimism reigns.
Hey, Paul, how are you?
Hey, good to hear from you.
Yeah, optimism. I'm a longtime Razorback fan. I obviously bleed Razorback red, but I'm also a realist as well. And I don't see us beating Kentucky. I'm sure there's a lot of people going to be upset about that, but I think the last 3 times that we played Kentucky, we tend to always match up well against them athletically and running the floor because that's kind of our style. And we swept them last year at Rupp, and we beat them the time before that. But I think this Kentucky team's a lot deeper than previous teams, and we may stay with them for a little bit, but I don't see us ultimately pulling out a victory. And also, I think the spread's like 19 or 20 for the game for us. Kentucky's favored. Now, Nolan would use that as putting that on a chip on his players' shoulders, and they would come out ticked off. And, if you remember his teams back from the 90s, we would go into Rupp and basically kind of embarrassed Kentucky on their own home floor.
I remember one game.
possible.
You may remember it. I think it was a Sunday afternoon. Maybe I went wrong when Patino and Nolan hooked up. I mean, it was like the 1 and 2 in the country. I can't remember the year, but it was one of the
Early 90s.
Yeah, I remember the game well. Well, not that well. I remember the play.
Yeah, exactly. It was an early 90s game, and we went into Rupp Arena. No one thought we could do what we did, and we just come out with a victory. But I will say this, and as much as I love the Razorbacks, I want to say this to Kentucky fans too, though. I believe that if Kentucky played in a basketball conference like the ACC, I don't think they would be undefeated. I think Duke could beat them. I think Virginia could beat them. I think some other teams could beat them.
Well, it would be different. I mean, the pressure. You're right. You go to Syracuse, you go to Duke, you go to Virginia. Used to say North Carolina in that, but not anymore. It could catch up. I mean, listen, Kentucky nearly lost 3 times this year in SEC play. Ole Miss and A&M in overtime, and then the game at Baton Rouge 2 weeks ago on Tuesday night came down to the final play. So. But I mentioned those 3 games because after that there really wasn't anything close.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I'm just thinking a basketball conference like that, I don't even see Kentucky at 27-0 at this point. It could be possible, but, when you're going to Duke and to Virginia and some of those other places, the competition is, it's a lot more intense.
But you would admit, though, James, Kentucky's played Indiana, Louisville, North Carolina. That's just, they've played a lot of competition, so they're ready. I mean, no, but there's a difference, though, in going in conference play. I mean, it finally, not to compare football to basketball because they're completely different, but eventually the wear and tear catches up to you at some point in time.
Exactly. And I think with the NCAA tournament coming around, usually the favored team, for the most part, usually the favored team usually never wins the tournament. It's usually a team that, I don't know, they run into a buzzsaw. Someone shoots 60% from the field, or a team out-rebounds another team, or they 3-point shoot them out of the building on one particular game. We see that over and over, and that's why the tournament is such a beautiful thing to watch, because on any given night, anybody can be beat, even the best teams. Would you agree?
Well, no. I mean, listen, I don't remember what the line was, but, most people thought Wichita State would beat Kentucky last year.
Exactly. Good point. But anyway, I just appreciate your call, man. Or letting me through anyway, and just to voice my opinion. And I appreciate your show. Thanks.
James, our pleasure. Really good to hear from you. It's really been, I'm enjoying the Arkansas fans. That was a very realistic one, but, that's what you need. You need fans who believe in their team. And right now in the SEC, there's not a lot of that going on because SEC has been all over the map, and the team that has been the biggest threat to Kentucky or vice versa over the last couple of years has been the biggest disappointment this year, and that's the University of Florida. We talked about that earlier. Let's check out Robert next in Memphis. Robert, good afternoon.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Hey, I know you've been talking about basketball from what I've been watching, but I just wonder whether you might know how high Bo Wallace was going to get picked in the NFL draft. See, I had said he was probably going to go 3rd round. What do you think, Paul?
I'm no draft expert, but I'd be pretty surprised if Bo went in the first 3 days.
Okay, see, what round are you saying like he would go?
I'm not sure he's going to go. You think he's going to go in the first 3 days?
No, I don't know if he's projected to be picked, but sometimes that works out better to be a free agent to come in. He's got an arm on him. We'll see.
So you are saying that Bo Wallace might not get drafted?
Well, let me say this: just because you don't get drafted doesn't mean you can't sign a free agent contract or a supplemental or whatever. I think Bo Wallace will be in an NFL camp at some point. I just don't think he'll be drafted.
I want to know, to me, I would have said he was one of the top 3 SEC quarterbacks from last year. He was much better than Zach Prescott. He whooped him up 2 touchdowns in that Egg Bowl. I don't know what you're thinking, Paul, but I want to tell you I think he's going to get drafted 3rd round.
Okay, listen, Robert, I've been wrong many times in my career. This won't be one of them.
I think you're going to be this time, Paul.
Yeah, I'm doing some research on the topic, and if I could read this quote I just stumbled on NFL.com. The NFC Director of Scouting says Bo Wallace is those types of quarterback who are always trying to save the city, but he's actually burning it down.
Well, I mean, don't forget, Russell Wilson wasn't thought of that highly either a couple of years ago. He turned out okay, so maybe Bro Wallace will work out well too.
Well, good. Now, I can't believe you don't even think he's going to get drafted. I think there is no question.
Hey, Robert, let me. You're from Memphis, right?
Right.
Okay, so am I. We have that much in common.
It's probably the only thing we have in common.
Yeah, I think it is on this conversation. I'm not hating on Bo Wallace. I'm just simply stating to you what we've been told.
Are you sure you're not hating on Bo? I'm not so sure.
Okay, let me correct myself. I'm hating on Bo Wallace.
Hater.
And there's a reason, let me ask you a question. This is a stupid question. Did you see Bo Wallace play last season?
Yes, I'm a huge Ole Miss fan.
Okay.
You think I didn't watch them?
And what did you see, Robert, from Bo Wallace that would convince you that he should go high in the NFL draft?
Look, Paul, he beat Alabama and Mississippi State, both of which were number one teams at some point in the polls. I don't know what you're thinking, but if you can do that, I think I think you got caliber in the NFL.
Okay, did you see the end of the LSU game?
The LSU game, yes, I did. Hey, he threw one pick. I mean, good night. You can't throw a guy out because he threw one pick. Good night. That's what happened at the end of the Bama game in the Sugar Bowl. But, hey, Blake Sims ain't getting hated on by you.
Nor is he being talked about as a first-round pick or a second-round pick or a third-round pick.
Oh, good night. So?
You still there?
I'm still here.
Okay. Did you see Bo? Did you see Bo Wallace in the Arkansas game?
No, I actually wasn't watching that when I was out doing something in my yard.
Okay. You're much smarter than I thought. Did you see Bo in the Chick-fil-A Bowl?
Look, that was TCU just threw it. That's our defense. That ain't Bo. The defense ran all over our defense. We didn't have the greatest defense this year. I mean, we shut down a bunch of SEC teams, but it turns out none of them won the – obviously none of them even got in the national title game. So, I mean, I think TCU deserved to be in the playoff. They were just a better team, but it sure wasn't Bo's fault we lost.
Okay. So the grand sum of this conversation, Robert, is this. Nothing is Bo's fault, right?
Well, I'm not going to lie to you. He's thrown a few picks this year. I mean, I'm going to tell you that pass he threw in the end zone for the touchdown in the Chick-fil-A ball, yeah, that was his fault. But you know what? That was one of the few bad plays he made this year.
Robert, he threw 3 interceptions in the Chick-fil-A ball.
Okay,
I mean the only thing Bo Wallace got out of that game was a free Chick-fil-A sandwich.
Oh, good night. Look, I'm just saying, he got picked.
Robert, let's be honest, okay? He was terrible in that game.
Okay, fine. He was terrible in that game, but you got to look at the rest of the season as an overall.
And I'm not bringing up the Auburn game. I'm not talking about. I think he fumbled, but I'm not holding that against him because that was.
Good.
Why don't you just go to bed already? Get him out of here.
I mean, we don't hate on players, at least until they graduate.
Oh, sure. Sure, like right after what I've been hearing about this, yeah.
Anything else?
Well, I'm just telling you, I think he's going to be at least a third-round draft pick, if not higher.
Now, you're from Memphis, right?
Right.
You born and raised there?
Yep, sure was.
Me too. We still have that much in common.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, listen, let's try to end this as friends, okay, Robert?
Okay, I can accept that you may not think he's the best one. I'm just asking you, do not hate on Bo. He was I would say great. Maybe not. May not be what you say, but I would say he was a great player in the SEC this year.
Oh, good night, Robert.
Thank you for listening to the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. Tune into the Paul Finebaum Show every day from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network or on the ESPN Radio app.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.